you've made the decision to quit drinking, and then out of nowhere, you get a sudden and intense urge to have a drink. What do? You don't want to give in on your sobriety, but the urge is so intense, you're not really sure how to handle it. In today's video, I'm going to talk about some tips and strategies to use when those cravings do occur. Now, the first thing to recognize is that cravings are normal, and you might always have them. With time and effort and constant work, those cravings may dwindle over time, but it's okay to have the cravings. It's what you do once you have those cravings is what matters. These cravings are totally normal. They're a part of the recovery process. Everyone deals with them, in different severities depending on the person. I dealt with my cravings. I don't really have them anymore, which is great, but definitely had to deal with them, early on. So know that you're not alone. A lot of these cravings or urges, they can be tied to certain environments, emotions, or even activities. So if you're used to coming home from a long day at work and grabbing a drink, or you celebrate with friends with alcohol, or if you use them to cope during stressful situations, your brain has associated those environments followed up by a drink. So when you experience these certain cues, let's say, your brain is expecting to get alcohol. And that's where these cravings come from. There's also emotional triggers. This could be stress, anxiety, loneliness, or even boredom. So it's important to understand these emotional triggers as well. And again, with these emotional triggers, when you're feeling these certain emotions, your brain is expecting to get alcohol when you're feeling this way. So when you're sober and if you're bored or if you're feeling lonely or sad, you're going to have a craving. There's also social and environmental cues, right? So if you're going into a situation where there's alcohol present, back when you were drinking, usually, at least in my experience, as soon as I got to a party or a gathering of any sort, like my brain immediately goes to, let's get a drink. Like that's the first thing. You got to have something in your hand. And there's also the issue of escaping uncomfortable emotions, like I mentioned earlier. So when you're feeling these uncomfortable emotions, instead of dealing with them or observing them, recognizing them, your brain, to suppress those emotions, is expecting alcohol. So again, when you're feeling these certain emotions, you're going to have a craving. So it's important to understand when your triggers arise. Maybe you can anticipate them ahead of time and have a plan for what you're going to do when you do get those cravings. But I'm going to offer you some simple tricks, simple tips to maybe help alleviate those cravings when they do arise. Oftentimes, when you get a craving, you want to act on it immediately. But if you give it some time, that craving will just naturally dissipate. So give yourself 5 minutes. If you get that craving, just try to distract yourself or try to think of something else for at least 5 minutes, and sometimes that'll work and your craving will disappear, or you'll go on to another activity and the craving will be gone and you won't even be thinking about it. Now, in my experience, early on having that craving, usually I didn't have any alcohol in the house, so I couldn't grab it right away. That was part of my strategy, was just not having alcohol in the house at all. But there were times when there was alcohol in the house, like if we had people over and there was alcohol left over. I can remember one specific case where I was doing yard work all day. It was hot. I came to get something to drink and I opened the fridge and there was just a cold IPA just staring at me. And for a few seconds, I was like, damn, that sounds so good. but I quickly closed the refrigerator, got some water, and just went back outside. And within a few minutes, it was gone. So give yourself a few minutes before acting on that craving right away. You can distract yourself. You can do something to kind of break that routine or that habit loop when you do have that craving. So when you do get that craving, naturally, what you used to do is just go get a drink. But what I want you to try to do is something that you wouldn't normally do at all, but especially when you have a craving to drink. So that could be, you have a craving. Okay, maybe do 20 push-ups. That's random, but it'll get your mind off of it for the time being. Or maybe you go for a walk, or maybe you go for a run. You can even try some breathing techniques. Breathe super deep, inhale, exhale. You could do some box breathing. I'd recommend you look up some breathing techniques that can help you cope with, the urge or your craving to drink. So those were some short-term strategies that you can do in the moment, right? And over time, the more you fight your cravings and the more you resist the urge to grab a drink when you have those triggers come up, the more confidence you'll build. You'll also start to rewire your brain. The more you fight it when you do get those cravings, your brain starts to rewire itself. So when you do feel those triggers, you're not automatically pressed for a drink. So, and these adding up over time will be a part of your long-term strategy to fight your cravings. Now, the long-term strategies, obviously, you want to avoid situations that are going to cue the craving. So that could be certain social situations. It could be avoiding certain people for the time being. And you're going to have to start to build new habits. Habits that aren't associated with alcohol or keep you distracted from alcohol. And then over time, that becomes your new routine and alcohol won't even be a thought. Now, I recommend exercise of any kind, whether that's weights, cardio, swimming, hiking, whatever. Find something that suits your lifestyle, your body, but do something physical, because not only once you start building a healthier lifestyle, over time, alcohol will be less of a priority. It won't even be a thought, because on your journey to a healthier lifestyle, alcohol just doesn't fit into that plan. And if you truly like the taste of alcohol, there's obviously tons of non-alcoholic beverages that you can still enjoy if you genuinely like the taste. For me, did I like the taste? It was okay, but it was only okay because it got me drunk and got me buzzed. I've had a few non-alcoholic beers in the last two and a half years. And it's just like, for me, what's the point of drinking if I'm not gonna get drunk? So honestly, I drink water for the most part. I'll have an iced tea here and there, but it's just water. I know that sounds boring, but I love water. I think it tastes great and it makes me feel good, and that makes it taste even better. And that leads me to a very important subject with, dealing with your sobriety journey as a whole, but also your cravings. What's your mindset, or what's your motivation behind quitting drinking altogether? And that's something that really helped me when I did have the cravings, or I did have the urge to go out and party with friends, is to think back on why I started this journey to begin with. And that usually is a real quick, jolt, I don't need this drink, because I know where that leads. That leads me back to where I was. And that's not a path that I have any interest on being on anymore. So reflect on your why. That's something you can do in the moment. That's something you can do every day. Why did you quit drinking? You can reflect on how it was affecting your job. How is it affecting your relationship? Were you on the verge of losing, any relationships? A relationship with your spouse, with your partner, with your siblings, with your parents, with your kids. And that alone right there is enough motivation to walk away from your urge to have another drink. So it's very important to have a strong why and keep that in mind at all times, even when you're not having cravings, when you're going into a social setting or going and hanging out with friends where prior you'd be drinking, or alcohol was the main attraction. Think about the consequences if you do have another drink. Think about where you were headed when you were drinking. Think about how much your life has improved since you quit drinking. And think about where you're headed, right? If you go back and have a drink, you're basically starting all over. And I know I dealt with that so many times when I was making some good progress, and I'd go out and drink, and I'd feel even worse than I did the last time I drank, because I just wasted all that time and all that progress for one night of fun. And so that really helped with the cravings, Like I said, cravings are a part of the journey, but they don't have to derail your progress. They're totally normal. Everyone deals with them. It's about applying practical strategies and keeping your motivation strong when you do have those cravings. That way you can stay on your path of sobriety, be committed, and do whatever you can to fight those cravings. They will come up. They may come up when you least expect it. And they might come up when you expect it, and have a strategy for both. All right, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you found it inspiring, if you found it helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, cravings are normal. Everyone deals with them. You got this. You can handle it. So be kind to yourself, and we'll see you on the next one.